All right, we are live with this live edition of the New Warehouse podcast, and I'm very excited for today's live session because we're going to be talking about a topic that I have to say has come up multiple times in conversations at conferences this year and all the time. Really, people are always curious. How does 3PL pricing work? Whether from a brand perspective, how do they come up with those numbers? Or from a 3PL perspective, even, how do we come up with the right numbers? And how do we make sure that we're successful while also making sure that the brand wins as well and we're able to support them? So we're going to hear today from the panelists that you see on the screen here that will get to chime in here in a few minutes, but they are representing Barrett Distribution, which is a large 3PL with multiple locations. I think you guys got what, like 20 locations, right? Something like that.
It's between 22 to 25, give or take one or two. We seem to be adding new facilities every year, so it sounds right, Kevin.
All right. So it sounds about right. Okay. But the point is they have a lot of facilities, which means they kind of know what they're doing when it comes to fulfillment and the 3PL space. So we're going to tap into their knowledge here, and we're going to hear from a couple different sides of the business. We have Catherine Roth here. She's from marketing side, Brian, who heads up sales and marketing, Kent Blackburn from solution design manager from the solution side. And we're going to talk a little bit about how do solutions get designed for specific clients, and then from Harrison Smith as well, who heads up he's the director of 3PL pricing and contract analysis. So his job is like pricing. So I think he's got.
Should we just drop Harrison around with it?
Yeah. So it all hinges on him. Basically, I think is what I'm.
He's the money man. He's the money bag. Yeah. He's the bag holder.
So we are going to talk about 3PL pricing today. We're going to look a little bit behind the scenes of what goes into that. So if you are joining live with us, whether it's on LinkedIn, YouTube, X, Instagram, whatever the case may be, and you have questions, feel free to drop them in the comments, and we're happy to get our panelists to answer them and give you some insight here as we look behind the scenes. So let's kick it off here and talk a little bit about where 3PL pricing even starts, right? Because we have brands out here that are looking for 3PLs. They're looking for somebody to help them potentially. Maybe it's their first time looking for a 3PL. Maybe they're looking for a new 3PL because they're outgrowing or they had a bad experience, whatever the case may be. So Brian and Kat, let's tee this one off with you. I mean, where does 3PL pricing even start? Like, how does the brand come into the ecosystem to even start this discussion?
Yeah, so that's a broad question. I'm going to try to provide some value today and not be boring. And I'll give the Barrett perspective, and then maybe we can touch on the market perspective. So, where pricing starts at Barrett is with data, and that's a lot of data, maybe more than other 3PLs. But the goal here is to develop, a custom solution based on the parameters that a client gives us. Now, some customers, depending on the size of the company, have better data than others. But the initial goal of the commercial process is to uncover data, validate assumptions that we already have, learn about the brand, learn about the company, and then design a custom, solution based on the data. Now, one of the topics that I'd written down was this idea of rate card versus custom pricing, right? Where, because your question is triggering that in my head. Is like, okay, for how is that? How do we marry what I just said with some companies that maybe just hand out a rate card and say, here's your pricing, right? Because you could just say, well, here's your price. So I think the big difference in the 3PL market and maybe even the companies that are working with a 3PL are the level of complexity and nuance to their account. Where if you're a startup or working with a 3PL that only does XYZ, they might have some type of rate card already built in as a starting point, and then offer that out to a number of clients. And that certainly does work for certain sections of the economy, certain businesses, right? Where as it pertains to Barrett, we tend to work with brands that have a little more any nuance, okay, that have maybe messy data, complex data, and not just data, but their process. So I think we'll get into a little bit of that today. But it starts with, and that might be a boring Excel file to a certain degree of like X, Y. Harrison's laughing.
I love Excel.
Right. This is not to bore people to death or trigger work. It's more or less that's where it starts. It's to tell us about your company, and the simple way to do that is to have some type of profile form. And I think most 3PLs do this. Even ones that maybe offer a rate card is more of a validation thing. I don't know, Harrison, Kent, if you guys have thoughts on that.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, we definitely want to with our pricing, we really want to understand what you need, right? We're not trying to square peg round hole it. We're just gonna figure out the right thing for you. And that's where, I mean, Kent and his team, they really do a lot of the tough questions and make sure we really understand what you need and what we're looking for.
Kevin, it's an educational, by the way, for us as well.
Mm-hmm.
It can be frustrating. I've been on the other side. I have it doing this with 9 or 10 companies, and then if you're in an RFP, dwindling down to 2 or 3 providers, repeating the same things over and over again. It's an educational thing for us. And what I found is surprising in my career, and maybe not so surprising, many companies, even like Fortune 100, have never run their own supply chain.
Mm-hmm.
And they're rarely in a warehouse. Some of these things they actually don't know.
Yeah.
The reason why they're maybe searching for a new partner is because of pain points on the ground, and they don't really even know why it's not going well. It just isn't going well. They have an idea. It's maybe things are, what is a slow order? What does that even mean, right? It's aside from stuff's not going out on time, the relationship is deteriorating, blah blah blah. It's our job to make sure that doesn't happen again, and that is why we're so detailed with the data, right, Ken? I mean, you work in this all the time. A lot of times, Ken, you'll push back on us, meaning we need to get better information. And so it's a joint effort, I think, right, Ken?
Yeah, we don't. The least amount of assumptions, the better, right? And so I think Brian and Harrison have touched on this, where we're not just going to give over a generic solution, right? We want to cater to your business. We want us to be an extension of you guys, right? We want to make sure that we can operate and we know the ins and outs of your business before giving you a solution design and a price, because we want to be successful and we want you guys to be successful as well, or any client to be successful as well. So we're not just putting any cookie cutter generic design out there, and it all starts with the data, right? And to Brian's point, when we push back and we say, hey, Brian, can you go out and collect some more of these questions that we need, right? It's all in good faith that we're going to put those assumptions into our solution design before, letting you guys know exactly what's in the design. So the more data, the better. And if not, we have to come up with assumptions, right? We've been doing this for years, and we know, generic apparel or med device, or, what kind of assumptions we can make educationally, educated guesses based off of the type of space that it's in. We don't like to do that, but if we need to, we will, and then we'll just state our assumptions back to you guys and say, hey, your solution is based off of this stuff, right? But the least amount of that, the better for us, for a solution design.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think that's a really interesting approach, right? Because I think there's 2 different angles there, like you're talking about, Brian. Like, do you just have a standard rate card and
Yep.
send that out, or do you really do this, kind of education, learning about like what is their need, what are the things there. We're getting a lot of love for the Kramer here.
I know.
So we
I see
love
it in the chat.
in the background.
I want to chat back, but I do have to join YouTube or connect YouTube to connect. I'd love to know that for next time.
I think you drop a comment right there in the little comments thing. And so thank you guys for joining and shouting out to Kramer as well. He's the star of the show. So
Yeah.
that's good. But
First
so
impressions.
I actually did my hair today, or normally it does look.
Hair
like
is
Kramer.
flowing.
oh yeah.
Silky.
It's flowing.
Definitely. So one of these things as these leads come in, right, and maybe there's something on your side, Kat, like bringing leads in. Obviously there's tons of brands out there, right? There's how many thousands of people doing e-commerce selling, right? But obviously not every brand is like a fit, right? So how do you kind of up front, make sure you're qualifying the lead to even, start to go down this path of like, let's learn more, let's develop pricing and figure out what solution design might look like?
Yeah, so I mean, an unconventional answer, because I could give you like the actual metrics, but I think something that other 3PLs might not focus on as much that we really do is like a culture fit, as well as like,
Mm.
yeah, so do we fit on a level where like even our people and your people can come together? Because ideally, I mean, these are people you're going to be working with very closely, spending a lot of time with. So that's one thing we really try to like cultivate is like learning more about your team, meeting the people on your team during the on-site visits, making sure that the people you're going to be meeting with, that we connect. Just recently, earlier in this year, I was there with a new client, and they came from Australia. Shout out to Kulani Kinis, and they got
I
to
saw y'all
see.
posted about that. Yeah.
Yes,
Definitely.
yes, and I was there, and I mean, we did some fun things. We also try to not make this boring, because that's another part of, really building that long-term meaningful relationship. So like doing events together. So I mean, those are things that we try to fetch out from the beginning, as if it's going to be a culture fit.
Yeah, we talk. I mean, Kevin, we talk. Even the subject of the webinar, pricing. Everything's rightly so. Focus on cost right now. Everyone's focused on cost. We are too. I mean, we're not immune. Everyone's not. Nobody's immune from focusing on cost. But beyond that, with the idea that many companies have never run their own facility, are not in the warehouse. It's an invisible cost center to them in a way. It's on us to educate and to really help create a culture, a partnership together that's long lasting. And what Kat's done on the marketing side early on in the commercial process, by the way. So that's another thing is that when you say what is a part of 3PL pricing, well, what I think companies should look for, even if it's not with Barrett, is early on meeting other people in other departments. We spend all of 80% of our lives with our work folks. Somebody used to say, we might as well try to have a little bit of fun together and work together. And so we do that on the marketing side. We do that on the floor. We were just talking earlier this morning how we have Barrett employees on the ground wearing merchandise of the brand that they're working on. We sell that early on in the sales process. Some companies may not value it at the time, but I think they do after they visit and they see the staff touching the product every day, right? They're part of their sales. They're part of their because the brands are cooler than us. Okay, they just are. We're Barrett 3PL. You know what I mean? We're running warehouses.
We talking about warehouses are sexy. You didn't know that?
I know you have to say, but we decorate. We create try to create an employee culture that matches the fit of the company culture as well. Because guess what? That affects performance, right? That affects their packing and speed and excitement, and which affects labor, which affects cost, right? So I think that we try to do a good job. Kat, you've done an amazing job creating a vibe of the brand inside the warehouse, and it's kind of their little warehouse. That's how do you put that into a price? I don't know. It's a story. I think you believe it when you meet our team, you meet our our people. If I could offer one piece of valuable advice to anyone listening, is to stay engaged and be visible during the 3PL pricing process. Try to not do one-on-ones. Like once you dwindle the things down to 2 or 3 providers, encourage your teammates to hop on Zoom calls. If whether that's your procurement guy or your the person that handles the materials and person in marketing, get those folks engaged in the process and get buy-in. I think it's vital for a long-term relationship with your 3PL partner. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that just builds on to what we were talking about earlier, where the more information, the less guessing, as Ken said, the less guessing that we have to do, the better our pricing and more narrowed our pricing and solution is. So the more people that are involved from the brand side, the better. So if someone was from the marketing side or from procurement or whatever, they might ask different questions than the supply chain operator that's running the 3PL. So there's the more people involved from the brand side, the better. And I know it's tough sometimes when you have like smaller brands where you're run by 3 people and it's like, oh, I'm wearing all these different hats. But again, I think I'm just pounding the table here. Like, the more information, the better. And we try to make it fun. Kat, I think were you going to say something? I might have cut you off.
No, but I am the president of fun here, so it was just
Oh, Jordan says you're the creator of the vibes, though. So
yeah, exactly. He meant president, but yeah.
all right,
President
very
and
good.
founder.
Yes.
Yeah.
CEO of the vibes, yes.
CEO Vibe, Chief Vibe Officer. Yeah, definitely.
Oh,
So
I like that. All right,
Yeah.
changing my signature. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a great thing too, because you know, Brian, like to your point, I mean, like how do you put that in a price, right? But it's part of that kind of like holistic, you know, package that you're going to get. So when we look at the pricing, right? I mean, Harrison, like you are the pricing guy. I mean, it's in your title, right? So why don't we ask you a little bit? I mean, when you look at this pricing, like who should be involved internally from your perspective? Like who gets involved in developing this pricing in the first place?
From a 3PL side?
Yeah, from like Barrett's perspective, yeah, who gets involved?
I mean, it's a team effort from our perspective, and I think I've been with a few other 3PLs in the past as well, and it's pretty consistent. Obviously, sales has a big impact in it, but I reside in finance, so my role sits up through finance. So I'm always wearing that finance hat, understanding all the financials of Barrett and where we are. So working with engineering and the solutions team they are the ones that are coming up with what it's going to cost us. So from a capital perspective, from a labor perspective, Brian, I think you mentioned earlier today with when we were talking, like we're selling time, right? It's our work that we're doing, and so
that's our business.
So whatever we're doing, so we're trying to figure out that time that it takes to do things, and then from
which Harrison, by the way, is no different than a business owner, or no matter how large the company is.
Sure.
You're managing time. Whether it's your employee time, productivity. This is just an outsourced cost center that could be a revenue generator for you, right? So like the idea of us selling time is just, if you took most companies' labor rates divided by 3,600 seconds, you're going to get 1 or 2 seconds. I hope that was told to me like 10 years ago, Kevin. It's still pretty kind of true. Is that the 3PL space is about a penny a second?
Penny a second.
And so it's and it's our job to figure out how long things take. By the way, have a tiny margin. I think it's pretty well known that our side is insanely competitive.
Sure.
It's easier than ever to just fire up a building and start 3PL because of software, right? Mm-hmm. You can, get a couple different IT pieces in the building and start your own 3PL. So we have insane competition. It's like 21,000 some 3PLs, and we're all selling time. Who can do it best? Who can do it most optimal, et cetera, et cetera. So that, Harrison, that is what we do. And part of the reason why we ask so many data questions is to figure out, will this take more time than you say it will, right? And we don't.
How often does it take more time than the brand says it will?
Well, that's obviously one of the things that we battle with. And we have, once we get into the solution and we're running the operation, there's always one of those, hey, like, this is a little bit more complex than you sold it to, or what you sold to us. Like you told us that this was a simple pack out, and now we're tissue paper and we're folding it in and putting it into a box and all this other. It's not just putting it into a bag. So those are conversations.
Harrison, by the way, Harrison, we both know, and this is neither here nor there, that if we miss something, it's on us.
Right.
Like, it's our fault. So not only will we take maybe blame, rightly so, because you're paying us to run your supply chain and understand it. And so just because a company says, "Oh, I forgot to tell you about the gift wrap," like, that's on us.
We should
have. Yes, you didn't tell us. Yes, it's a little. Yes, the returns process is a little harder than we thought it would be, or takes. But that's our job. So we take that personally. We also know that when the problems happen, it's on us to fix them in a cost-effective way. And we don't want to have to redo contracts, redo pricing. It's not a good experience for anybody. And everyone's been through that. and you can't recover from it, right? So
yeah, absolutely. So I guess maybe Harrison, a question for you, since you're on the finance side, right?
Yeah.
Mentioned, it's incredibly competitive area, right? I
Mhm.
mean, there's 21, 22,000 3PLs out there. Who knows how many there are at this point? And I feel like I hear about a new one that I never heard of like every week, right? But
Right.
when you look at that, it's incredibly competitive. So how do you make sure that you come up with pricing that is viable for you as Barrett, like is going to be profitable, right? But then is also like competitive and a win for the client too.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a really, really good question. It's really important for us, and Ken, if you have anything to add on this, but when we try to design that solution, we've built our models to understand. So when we have a solution that we've designed, we're understanding all of our costs. So understanding the IT work that we need to include, or the automation that we're putting in, or any capital that's needed for that solution. All of that's built into our costing because of the data and experience that we have. So once we have all of our costs, then we understand that excuse me, we understand what the revenue we need to kind of generate, and back into that number. And I think one of the key things, and we've been pushing this kind of theme along the conversation so far, is getting in early and understanding and having conversations early. One of the great things about our sales team is they include myself, Kent, Kat, in conversations from the jump. And I always try to understand what's one of the key drivers of the customer looking for a new 3PL, and what's the pain points that they're looking for. So we understand what is really important from a pricing standpoint. So if you have a really heavy product,
Sure.
Transportation rates are going to be really important, right? Like we want to understand, all right, maybe we need to get really aggressive on our transportation rates, and our pick mates rate might be a little bit higher because we're making, ultimately we're going to come out to the same cost per unit, but we're going to do what's important to the customer, and try to build the solution that's attractive to the customer with what's important to them.
Yeah.
And just to add to that too, it's a two-prong approach, right? I'm the cost side. I send that over to Harrison and say, we can do this for $1 million, right? Harrison's got to go, and we're a business, right? So we have to make a margin as well. So to that competitive pricing, a lot of the times we're trying to get in the ballpark, right? And Harrison might come back and say, hey, listen, there's some things that we might have to do to get a little bit cheaper, right? And so if he's cut what he can cut, and now it's my job to go back to the operators and say, hey, listen, we're there, but we're in the top 3, we're in the top 2, right? And there's always these concessions that have to be made on our side in terms of cost, and we got to get operations on board to say, can we do this for this, right? Because this is going to go out, and if we can, we could be in the running, right, to win the piece of business. So to your point, with these 21,000 3PLs that are out there, we have to do all we can to we're towing the line of like winning the business and also winning profitable business, right?
Sure.
And so when they're talking about time and seconds and pennies and stuff like that, it really is like that on the solution design side. We're doing WMTs, we're doing most models to say, listen, we can pack out these boxes at 50 an hour, right? And so you have X amount of boxes, this is how many people you need, right? And if there's things that we can do to improve on that time to cut costs, then we're going to put that into the solution as long as we think it's a realistic possibility of happening. And then that's where Harrison's team and his side can maybe get a little bit more aggressive on the rates. But it's really hey, what can we do from a revenue standpoint and also from a cost standpoint?
We had an example was it yesterday, where I said, hey man, I think our picking's a little too expensive. So I push and beat down operation or engineering before sales does it.
Yes, that is.
By the way, it's you. I think many companies are finding out the risk involved with going with a partner that's either not making money or
Sure.
not digging through this stuff early. They churn and burn. And I think we've done a good job of kind of 20 years in a row with incremental growth and towing the line on what we're good at. I mean, I've told brand. I mean, sometimes if a company has so doesn't have nuance, or it truly is pretty straightforward, I've said, hey, like maybe you should self-fulfill. Maybe you don't need a 3PL. Like we try to give advice to the detriment of ourselves because we're in this for the long game. We're not. That company will come back in 5 years, say, hey, now I do need a 3PL. And I remember you told me to not come to, you know what I mean? Not come to us.
Yeah.
So like, we try to get, be honest, give good advice. We're consultants during the sales process, try to, tell companies what's best for them. I don't know. Kevin, somebody asked, Ahmed asked about, we should pay for automation equipment if we call the customer. It's a really good question. And I guess high level, I hate that phrase, but it is what it is. So I think long-term capital equipment when you're at scale is usually a joint venture with a new contract, maybe a 5-year ammo, 5-7 years. We've done a lot of these in our past life where, we have an example of a customer in our network who has been with us 7-8+ years, started from idea conception to their own custom solution. Now maybe we're looking at an auto store together. That could be a joint investment or a client paying for something where we're building out and really running an end-to-end solution for them. Sometimes there's opportunity. Like we run table stakes, robotics where it's like, Locust or 6RS or whatever, where we front it up front and we can punch in a whole bunch of companies in the same solution. I think generally if it's a standalone solution, you tend to have more pressure on companies to pay for certain aspects of the capital, right, Harrison? I mean, that's pretty common.
Right.
But it's definitely a joint conversation. It's not like, oh, you're just paying for it or we're paying for it. It's at that point, you're typically probably in year 7 or 8 of a relationship, and you open up your books and say, okay, how do we both get this done together where we can be profitable, you guys can get better productivity, and nobody wants to pay for anything, right? Whether it's us or a client. Yeah, right. So I mean, it's just a realistic thing. Hey, like, let's do this together and figure out a long-term contract that makes sense for the company. But those standalone solutions that are at scale, you're talking, like a good example is an auto store, 500,000 square feet, and a company that has big omni-channel presence. No, there's a joint investment for sure. Is that?
Yeah, Brian. Yeah. Nowadays, a lot of vendors are offering a pay-as-you-go type service, right? Because 10 years ago, it was labor that was going up. Well, over the past couple of years, now it's materials and stuff that's going up, right? So we get to these proposals, and then at the very end, we say, oh, we need $1 million up front for this piece of equipment. Not very attractive to some of the clients, right? And so nobody wants to, as Brian was saying, to just give you guys, $1 million so you can run this piece of equipment. So what we're finding now is that, you pay 14 cents per unit as you go, or something like that, right? Where it's not a huge upfront lump sum. It's more of a, as you use it, you pay us that we turn around and pay the vendor for. So we're seeing a lot of models like that recently. And so that's kind of helping out in terms of that, who pays for the automation. But in reality, we are going to only propose a piece of automation if the ROI is there, if it makes sense for you guys. If it was, $2 million a year manually, and it's $1.5 million a year with this piece of automation, right? We're not just going to include a piece of automation just to have it there, right? It's got to make sense for you guys, and it's got to make sense for the solution, which all stems from the data that we get from the clients that we get. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious. I mean, because Brian, you mentioned, maybe this is something that happens in like year 7 or 8 of the relationship, right? I mean, Kent, are you, when you have new clients coming in, or new prospects, I guess, coming in, not clients yet, and you're looking at the solution design for them, I mean, are you looking at automation options potentially for them at that point, or is that more after you've gotten them in and gotten to know like their business a little better, and then trying to find a better fit for them?
I should
Yeah,
probably
so
clarify real quick. I should probably clarify when I say year 7 or 8. Usually, technically, I meant probably maybe year 7 or 8 of the company's rapid growth, not necessarily a customer of
Oh, with
ours.
Barrett. Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, so like
Okay.
our customers that have some standalone infrastructure that they've either paid for or done jointly with us, they tend to be in that growth mode of maybe 10 years in business, and their scale dictates it. But to your point, Kevin, and I think Clint, you're going to answer this, but we have customers that come in already, maybe they're already breaking their current 3PL and they're looking for a capital infrastructure type of deal. So we do that from the beginning, Kent, right? I mean,
yeah, absolutely. You know, we get that a lot. So how do you balance automation and human labor when you're doing a deal? And, you know, it always starts with process, right? It's not equipment. We're going to come in, see what it looks like manually, right? If automation solves a real pain point, repetitive travel, picking, packing constraints, something like that, then we'll do another model to see if it makes sense to model that in, because the ROI has to be there, like I said, for us, for them, for everybody. Has to make sense to the customer. But, you know, sometimes the best solution is just a smart process design with good pick logic and layout optimization and stuff like that. So, you know, the right balance for this is has to enhance the team, not replace the team. That's how we get scalability without overinvesting. So,
Yeah, very interesting. And I'm curious too, because, you know, from an automation perspective, like as a 3PL, obviously there's a lot of variability, right? Like, you know, clients may change, they may leave, they may, you know, hopefully not, but they may go out of business, or their product type changes, which can make it difficult for to invest in like an automation solution on your side, right? Because, you know, if they're doing small items and then all of a sudden they decide they want to do a larger item that now doesn't fit on like a Locust or Six River or in a tote for an auto store or something like that. How do you kind of balance that and make sure that you're choosing solutions that have the right flexibility for you?
yeah, I don't want to keep going back.
I mean, Kevin, if I was going to say, just real quick, I mean, in full transparency, like large capital intensive deals have buyouts in them and exit agreements, and they just have to, right?
Okay.
Meaning, you know, a company exits or after 3 or 4 years, like, you know, there's a penalty, and which might make it unattractive. Okay. Like, so yeah, it really kind of forces a question of, do you really want this? Is this, you know, you get a sense of how serious the investment is when you both have skin in the game. Okay. It's a very important thing. Otherwise we could just, you know, buy an auto store, spend $20 million, throw it in a building, and we take all the risk. You know, we're not going to do that. That's silly. Other companies who have done that probably regret it. So it's good to have, you know, just full transparency, good legal agreement, have good financial exit agreements for both parties. It creates an incentive to make sure that this is the exact thing that you guys want to do, right? For both parties. And that's, you know, and I just think you know, because a lot of companies see a lot of they get advertised to, right? They get marketed to. The robotic companies are marketing to these clients saying, hey, like, you guys should be doing, if your 3PL is not doing X, Y, Z, you know, you stink, right? Or like, you know, whatever it is. And so a lot of them come to us and say, hey guys, why aren't we doing this? Or I saw this, or I saw that. And, you know, we entertain a lot of the conversations. I think that, you know, I think the trend lately is people are having some trouble seeing some of the paybacks on some of the automation, even the AI stuff, which, you know, we don't have an opinion on one way or the other. We just want to get your orders out on time at a good rate. Kevin, I'm curious what you've seen. I mean, you guys, yeah, go ahead, Harrison.
I was just going to add to it. We talk about the partnership and how that impacts pricing and solutions and everything else. And especially when we are partnered with a brand for years, we really do understand. We sometimes may have a better understanding of what their business is looking like than they may, because we have a lot of data, orders, units, what's selling, what's not selling, et cetera, et cetera. We work with them on forecasting. But one interesting scenario that we've seen is where brands might project growth and they're like, oh, with this growth, we're being advertised and sold, as Brian said, a certain solution. Well, that certain solution might be a big capital investment. So there's scenarios that maybe we don't go as heavy in the capital and robotics or whatever it might be, because that's ambitious. That's an ambitious growth goal that you have for the next 5 years. If you hit it, great. But if you don't, then there's a really big fixed cost tied to that may not be sustainable. So we've seen scenarios with that, and it's been I think really effective and beneficial to our partners when we provide that information and kind of, I don't want to say level set them, but
well, no, Harrison, they're very tough conversations. You almost have to redo a contract sometimes, and that nobody wants that.
No.
We want to take the risk with our partners. We don't want them to suffer, and we don't. One of the reasons why Kevin, people ask, like, can you do variable pricing or have variable rates? Well, that goes two ways,
Sure.
right? And nobody really wants to call our client and say, hey, you're going to get charged more because you're not producing volume. I mean, it's a terrible vibe. And so I just think definitely. That, companies need to be aware of that and know that, hey,
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. And I'm curious, I guess, a lot of the discussion has been around data, right? And data being kind of like a core part of developing this pricing. So I guess what's like the one piece of data that's, oftentimes missing from the brand that like brands should have prepared and be ready with to help, get better pricing for themselves?
Yeah. There's the big ones that you need are obviously volume. There's stuff like units per line, right? There's inventory snapshots. There's how many SKUs do you have? How many cartons on hand per SKU do you have? All these things will help us figure out what's the right solution for you guys, whether it's cart pick, whether it's locust pick, whether we put you in pallet locations or deck locations in a mezzanine, right? There's many solutions that can come from just looking at a piece of Excel spreadsheet that comes in, that we can look at the numbers and say, initially, this is what we think, right? It's based off years of knowledge of what works best in these scenarios. Because you don't want to put an account with 2,000 SKUs and 2 cases per SKU in pallet locations, right? Your space is going to blow up. Your cost is going to, that's just not the right fit, right? So we can get those answers initially from the data set that comes in. How many turns are your SKUs seasonal, right? So do you need a pick face for every SKU? How many of your SKUs are slow movers? We don't want to, bog down a bunch of pick area space with these slow movers if they're never going to move. Like these are just some examples of things that we pick up from data that comes in, that ultimately leads to our solution design that we pass over the fence to Harrison. Harrison prices it. It goes to the customer, right? And so without that data, like I said, we can make those assumptions. Great. But we would much rather say, all right, in 2026, you're going to look like this. In 2027, you're going to look like that. And what those solutions could be completely different for the same client, right? And so that's what we want to prepare for when we give you a price. And then in our proposal back to you is a list of all the assumptions that you might have given us or that we made ourselves, right? And so this saying, this is your price. Your price is based off this, right? And so when Harrison and I have come up and the team have come up with, this basically list of 50 or so items. I know that sounds like a lot, but that we send over to the client that will help us create your non-cookie cutter, your custom solution for you guys, because we feel like that's the best approach for you. And so, things like how many SKUs, like I said, how many SKUs, how many pallets on hand, their seasonality, stuff like that is stuff that will help us help you guys.
Yeah, one of the things I notice a lot is, and that companies might not know, is the SKU velocity, which you mentioned, is a important component to optimization beyond what you're doing today. So that's you think about, like, how can you get better pricing? Okay, so what's it, to be informative today and try to give some cheat codes. How do you get better pricing? Have control over your inventory and your SKU count, but and know your velocity. So because we can set up a floor design with A, B, C to Kent, like Kent's talking about, with certain fast movers, conveyor, blah, blah, blah. Otherwise, you're going to get base assumptions and basic pricing, right? But if you can provide like, hey, we have X number of SKUs, we have a good retirement program, we don't overinflate our inventory, and by the way, 80% of our SKUs are 20%, or 80% of our volume is 20% of your SKUs. If you can provide that stuff up front, we can really get narrow on solution design. Right. And a lot of companies, from the beginning. So we'll get there eventually once we just do the work. But that's one thing that companies can do up front during the pricing process, is say, hey, like we're implementing a retirement program. We're never going to balloon inventory. We're going to retire out SKUs, retire out pick faces. We're going to give you velocity, we're going to give you order volumes with the actual SKUs. And then we can get really creative on the floor design, right? Whether or not we use a locust bot or whatever, because we can create walk paths, we can create a bunch of different things and kind of go beyond. Somebody's asking about the item master data file. Super important. Like
very important.
And by the way, how many deals have we worked on with? Yeah, go ahead.
Listen to that. So the item master is one of the most. I left that one out as one of our most important things that we need. But so thanks.
But by the way, sometimes we don't have it, right? Some dimensions are bad. I mean, that's the reason why somebody might be struggling with a 3PL is bad data, bad dimensions.
Sure.
They're experiencing overages, and charging for all that dictates space. So
because
I mean,
the item master legitimately is how it will help us build the foundation of what we think the space is for your account, right? If you got a piece of jewelry that's this big, right, or a shirt that's this big, or a bag of dog food that's that big, right? That's all that we're going to find that in the item master and figure out how we need to store that to shrink your space as much as possible. So we're going to put the jewelry over here. I don't know what account has jewelry, shirts, and dog food, but in this fake account, you got your small
dog
items
jewelry,
over
dog jewelry.
Yeah, I was gonna say dog jewelry.
There you go. You got your small items over here in this area where there's 1,000 SKUs that you can pick from relatively quickly. Then you got your medium SKUs over here that a little slower to pick because you got to walk you got to walk longer. And then you got your dog food over here in these pallet locations that is really slow to pick, right? Because there's a lot of space in between this SKU of dog food and that SKU of dog food, right? So the item master is, pretty pivotal. If we can't get it, again, we make assumptions around it, but that'll help.
Well, Ken, we also just do, we do a first article of inspection. See, these are, okay, so let's bring it baback to pricing and cost, Kev.
Sure.
We will get it at a cost.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we almost force our company, say, if you don't have the data, you're gonna pay us to go through and get it. Amazon does this on all their inbounds, X amount per each or whatever it is, because we don't feel like we can do a good job without dimensions, et cetera. And so we will say, look, we're gonna transfer inventory, and we're gonna go through every single item and enter in the dimensions, enter in the SKUs. It's required. We have to do that. If a company's telling you it's no big deal, it's a huge red flag. And if they're saying they're just, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, Brian. Because what this also does on the back end is it helps us with our cartonization, right? It's going to select a box. You don't want to ship air, right?
Sure.
And so these items, this item that's 2 inches by 6 inches, we don't want to ship out in a big box like this, right? So just to continue in your point, Brian, about how it's so important, is like there's a lot of things that the item master can do for us. Space, transportation, shrinking down the box, the airspace in the box, and location size within the warehouse. So just a couple of the points that why the item master might help us out.
Yeah, and I also want to add, not just to so in terms of to complement this process, something else that we do that hasn't been mentioned is a secret shopper. And essentially we will buy the product and really try to get a good look at your supply chain and, look at any new opportunities, challenges, anything that we could that would complement that item master or the data that has been given. So that's something else.
Okay, you've done it. It tells you a whole story on the brand experience, right? You can talk about that for a second, because
Yeah, I mean, even just now, recently, we had a consultation with a brand. We ordered the product, and it just goes to show, we know this, but I really want to hone this in, how important that unboxing experience is. And with this brand, we got to understand how committed they are to that experience. And the type of story they want to tell to their customers. So it was a beautiful dress, and it came wrapped in a tote. I ended up using that tote in Hawaii for 2 weeks. People saw the tote, people asked about the tote, but it also kept the brand front of mind. So we get to understand the brand's culture, what they really are, the story they're telling from a branding and marketing perspective. So it's a full experience from beginning to end in understanding not just the client supply chain, but also their branding and marketing.
Yeah, Kat, it's so funny that something like that can tell two totally different stories, right? Where we're extrapolating a bunch of brand vibes, and then Harrison and Ken are, hey, what's the dimension on that box, right?
Oh yeah.
Like, is there any airspace in there, right? Or like,
I'm like, can I just put this on? And they're like,
I know,
no,
we're like, Kat, take a photo, and we're like, are there any inserts? Are there any? You know what I mean? We're what's the was it branded box? Is it a poly? So these are a bunch of things that we feel like we are doing. Look, there's a lot of good 3PLs out there doing similar things, et cetera, et cetera. Definitely a rising tide lifts all boats type stuff here. But I think these are things that companies should look for during the process, right? To a detail oriented process like that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great way to look at it from both sides. Like, what does the actual user of the product, like, what are they going to experience? But then how do we do the engineering and the number stuff behind the scenes to make sure that experience happens, and they don't even ever know about any of the number stuff, which I think for the end customer, right, is really the goal. Just enjoy the product, right, in that sense. So there's a good question here from Ricardo around the timing, right? So what's a reasonable amount of time to grant to 3PLs during a bid for the development of their pricing and proposal? And what are your thoughts on open book pricing by cost component? So how long, does this process take, I guess? Like, what should a brand expect to get pricing back? And, what are you looking for? Yeah.
So again, it depends on the, I should say this. It depends on the nuance of the business, number one. Number two, it also depends on the time of year, because Harrison can, we're all humans and have calendars. Personally,
Sure.
Commercially, I try to set the tone for at minimum 2 weeks.
Okay.
But that's assuming we can get meetings and engagement and get FaceTime with the client. I mean, a lot of it's, depending on that. It depends on the time of year, how many deals we're working on. I think 2 to 3 weeks is totally reasonable. If a company needs something faster than that, it can kind of raise red flags on our end.
Right.
It also, let's not overcomplicate this. We're not sending people to the moon, and it shouldn't take a month. Okay. But if you get full engagement on both sides, meaning availability, full team engagement, you get data quickly, couple weeks, I think it's reasonable. And then the second question around open book, somebody else asked a question on the capital, and it kind of, my brain started to go in a direction of mentioning how I do think that there's, what I've seen in my experience, there's an element of, as you grow and scale, you start investing your own capital. Somebody asked, like, who should benefit? And instead of answering like one way or the other, I was thinking that there is an argument to be made for cost plus deals, open book management. I think it's a natural evolution. When you get into the Fortune 100, they run end-to-end supply chain solutions with global 3PLs, and most of them are the quote cost plus. It's not because unit rates aren't possible. It's more or less, you have a lot of investment on both sides. It creates trust. You have an open book, a set margin, cost plus 6 or whatever it is. I think that those types of large capital deals lend themselves to that structure a little more than others. Harrison, I see you nodding your head, but I think
I totally.
We're not
totally
against
agree.
it. I think if a brand wants it,
do it.
Yeah,
we have customers that are cost plus, and we run buildings for them, and those relationships are great because we're an extension of the company, and it really works well. But for those brands, those are bigger brands. They need 200, 300,000 square feet of space that with heavy capital investment.
Well, they want to share in the benefit, right? So like we do Kaizens, we do quarterly Kaizen events where we're saving them money, to our own detriment and whatever it is. Like, we're showing them cost savings and sharing in the mutual benefit of that. So whether it's capital or efficiency gains, I do think that I think at some point that's probably an ideal type of contract.
Yeah, but to put a bow on what Brian was saying about the timing, it's really about how much engagement we're getting from the prospect. Because when we go
all
we're
in.
not an RFP warehouse. Like, we just don't put out respond to RFPs and you give us a sheet of paper and we're gonna do it. Like, that isn't a great relationship starter for us.
We do them. We look for engagement. We look for
we try to become part of the brand and part of the company, and so when we get engagement, we can usually turn it around in about a 2-week time frame.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. That's good to know. Definitely. And we have a question here about around the.
Well, but Kevin, by the way, when a company, if a company comes to us right away and says, "Hey, look, I need XYZ by this date," we have a big network too. Like, there are companies structured a little differently that can take, or maybe a regional 3PL with a single facility in Texas can take you in next week, give you a rate card, take you in. There's a lot of different types of companies out there, and we try to help you either way, right?
Yeah.
So
definitely.
Yeah.
So this question from Adam here in the audience is about labor, right? So can you speak a little more to how labor plays into your thoughts around pricing, and how do you adjust labor solutions, whether it's full-time, temp, gig workers, to fit the tasks that need to be done?
Yeah, that's a really important question, we try to understand seasonality during that initial pricing of the business. We're trying to, if the brand is able to provide us with 12-month order data, then we understand, holy smokes, we're going to have a 20x peak in October because of Halloween, right? You're selling Halloween stuff or whatever it might be. So we're able to build that into our pricing and provide that information to our operations so that they know, like, hey, I only need to hire 4 people for 11 months of the year, but for that peak, I know I'm going to need to have a temp workers to help support that, because we're not going to be able to do it with the 4 people. But I don't want to staff 11 people all year long and have them stand around and do nothing. So we do try to build that into our modeling.
The labor handling is a huge metric at Barrett, just for our own optimization efforts, et cetera, et cetera. But maybe a different way to also answer this would be proactive communication with the client on the labor. We have found that if we can get in front of, listen, we talked about this earlier, Harrison, like if somebody 20X's in a day, that's a good problem, and we can get people. The question is, at what pace do you, and how much, at what cost? And so if we can say, look, we can do XYZ, you guys are blowing out your forecast, we can do XYZ by Friday. Do you want to pay for overtime? Do you want to pay for extra labor? We can shift build people around. So at the end of the day, you can't plan for everything, right? You can't always have the perfect amount of people on the floor. But what we can do is offer a quick solution at a certain price and let companies decide. Because again, these are usually good problems to have. If somebody needs more people, that usually means more orders, more volume, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, instead of like reacting to that, we say, hey, look, like we can do a weekend shift, we can stay late, blah, blah, blah. And so I think the one way we try to handle that is proactive communication with the accounts themselves and the GMs.
I mean, we want to try to get forecasts, like plan 2-3 months in advance. What that, like, as we're stable and we're running the operation, we work with the forecast, and we'll have a forecast. We'll work with the customer to have a forecast, but that's a way for us to manage the labor. But from the pricing component during the sales process, it's that trying to understand seasonality, staffing for what's needed for the majority of the year, and planning for, maybe it's not just people, but it's also equipment, right? So sometimes we got to plan for renting forklifts or order pickers, because that peak is so big that or whatever it might be, we got to have variable equipment as well.
I want to touch on the seasonality point as well too. We're looking at that holistically, right? If we've got a typical November, December, Christmas holiday peak, right? And then we have another account over here that's peaking in the summer, whether it's school supplies or pool supplies or something like that, right? We're going to model that to say, hey, we're going to grab these people in November and December over in account 1, bring them into your account, your summer peak account, right? Because we're already going to have them in the building, right? And so it's a benefit of having this campus environment when you're looking at a 3PLs that we're able to say, all right, let's grab some people from building 2 across the street over here for June and July because we'll need them then, right? We're looking into the seasonality as a whole from our building perspective and able to price that into our models in terms of where we might be able to pick from different labor pools from different accounts at different times of the year. So that all goes into account when we're putting deals together, because the top 3 things for cost are space, labor, and equipment, right? And so we want to minimize those costs, those 3 things, to minimize your costs as efficiently as possible.
Got it. Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense, definitely. And I love how you're kind of, taking, like Brian said, proactive approach, but you're also like, seems like you're very communicative too, like with the client, and like, hey, this is what's going on. This is what we need to do. And I think the client, should be able to lean on you as the experts, like, not only just to move their packages and their products, but also like, hey, what should we do strategically in this situation? We're seeing this growth or this spike. Like, how do we handle that? I think we got time for like one more question here, and we'll wrap it up. This is from Anna, who looks like maybe she's looking potentially for a 3PL, but she's curious on perspective where 3PL is new to FBA or WFS prep. I guess like we generalize this into a new service. If they're still learning the process, the 3PL, and the inexperience leads to higher handling costs, how should pricing be approached in that situation? Should clients expect to absorb that extra cost, or should the 3PL treat it as part of their own learning curve? And this one, I think you guys probably have tons of experience, right? So this wouldn't be you. But what would you advise, like, prospects as they're looking, if, they're looking for a certain service and the 3PL is new to it, or maybe they're like, oh, we'll learn how to do it for you. What would you advise there?
I mean, I think one of the things is, with the competition in the space, in the 3PL space, there is a market expectation of where prices should be for certain services and that are provided. So if the provider that this 3PL is with, or if this 3PL is not able to do the price or the service at that price, then it's probably not the right service for that 3PL. But
Harrison, I'll be blunt about it.
Give it to us, Brian. Yeah.
If you were lied to, then you probably shouldn't pay for it.
Right.
But I think you should be gentle on your 3PL if you're learning together.
Yeah, there's definitely a market for services. Mm-hmm. So if one provider, if a bunch of providers are able to do it at 30 cents and your current provider is trying to charge you 75 or $1, then that's probably not the right thing.
All right, good information there, definitely. And I think we answered most of the questions in the comments here, but I think we could probably talk about this topic for like another hour, I would say. So maybe we do a part 2 in the future, definitely. As long as Harrison brings Kramer, I think we'll be good, right? So
he went to college with me. I've had this for about 20 years now.
Oh yeah. I used to.
And the putting green. You got a putting green compliment too.
Putting green,
Fix my background.
He's got the ultimate setup there. I guess you just need a Kramer and a putting green to make some noise. So if we want to thank you guys for joining me here and having this discussion. I think a lot of people found it very informative. But Kat, we'll give you your moment to shine for marketing here, right? So if people are specifically maybe interested in engaging with Barrett and learning and maybe getting some pricing from you, what can you give them as kind of advice that helps you stand out as Barrett? And I think you told us a little bit earlier, but tell us from your perspective, like, how do you really try and stand out as a 3PL?
That's a great question, and thank you for giving me my moment. I've been preparing for this. Okay, no, so
hair flip. Okay.
Yeah,
I love it.
I will say, I think something that definitely helps us stand out is that although we are a big 3PL, I would say that the way that we interact with our clients, you would never know that and the way that we build our partnerships with our clients and really focus on how to amplify them and working with them from a marketing perspective. If you haven't met the marketing team at the 3PL that you're prospecting with, maybe that's a red flag. But I will say that, like, we, for example, with one of our partners most recently, Levenger, shout out to Levenger, they make beautiful craftsmanship products. But I went to their headquarters and I got to do an unboxing video live with their CEO. And I really, I made content with them as well and connected with them on how we can help them, whether that's through social media, email marketing. We also do press releases. We do a lot for our partners, and that's one way that we really try to stand out.
All right, fantastic. And if people want to be one of those clients or partners, what's the best way to find out more information?
BarrettDistribution.com, Kevin, and hit the contact button, or you can slide into any of our DMs directly.
Our DMs are open.
Our DMs are wide open. Yes. We don't solicit. We try. I mean, you guys know how to reach us. DM us LinkedIn or fill out our contact form on our website, and one of us will reach out to you right away, no doubt.
All right, fantastic, and thank you to the four of you for joining us. And I think we definitely need to do a part two. Maybe we'll do something like in January when people are really starting to look and they're disgruntled with their current 3PL from peak season, and they're looking for the new one. They want to know what to do. So really appreciate you all coming on here, and thank you to everybody tuning in, whether you're tuned on LinkedIn, YouTube, X, Instagram, wherever that may be. We're happy to deliver some value, and thank you to the Barrett team for helping us do that. And if anybody is free tonight, Brian might be there. We're having a warehousing after dark, a virtual networking tonight. I know you went to the last one, so hope to see you there as